get to some of that, but I want to shape how we get to that.
I was thinking some biblical knowledge.
Okay.
Learning the Bible.
The language of faith, which the Bible is the first language of faith. Do we know the stories? David Lose, I thought was pretty close to brilliant the other day. Did you get the stick to the humor of what he said about, well, please come, and I don't really understand what we're doing in worship, and you really won't either, but you got to come. It's important. Well, this confirmation is the time that we can boil that down and say, what does this mean? Now, what I want to do is walk you through, not mechanics, but creating an atmosphere where I believe this kind of stuff maybe can happen, and take this for what it's worth, but push back on me. I really want this to be a time in which you're able to say, boy, I'm not sure. Number one, it's all relational. It's all relational. Meaning, what we're after is a relationship with these young people and God. And how do you get to that relationship between the young person and God other than you get a relationship with the young person? It's all relational. And if we don't work at the relationship, they're never going to get to the other relationship. And even the relationship with yourself. Who are you? And how do you live as a child of God? And what does that mean? And so you make it all about relationship. Now again, I've tried to destroy that you have the big group meeting at the beginning. Now I'm coming right at it. Rather than doing that, what I would invite you to do, and again, this is strategizing, but for the bigger goal, is that you set up interview times with kids and their parents. I would literally chart it out. Nate, from 6 o'clock to 6:30, I met with Nate Balcom and his parents. And you know what? We didn't talk as much about confirmation as we talked about their life. How are you? What's going on? And 6:30, Balcoms had to leave, and then the next family came in, and I was with them from 6:30 to 7, and then 7 to 7:30, 7:30 to 8, 8 to 8:30, 8:30 to 9, and I'd only go to 9:30 because, to be honest, you get jacked up at the end of the night, and some people had to wait, and so. But did you see how many families I got to meet in one night? 6, 6:30, 7, 7:30, 8, 8:30, 9, 9:30. I could never make 8 calls on those families in a week. But you've got real focused time, and you sit and you talk. And you do ask the real general questions, and then you get real specific. Why do you want Nate in confirmation? Well, that's a real comfortable one for parents. They looked at me kind of like you just did. Why is this important? You know, we've got to take real advantage, because right now, confirmation is still important in society, and especially to Lutherans. And so we've got to undergird that, but we've got to be talking about it. Why is it important? People that I never saw in worship, all of a sudden, when the kid hits 7th grade, they're there. Who are you? Well, we're members of the church, and we want him baptized. Oh, great. Rather than shaming them, you say, this is great. This is an opportunity. And so you hear the individual conversations that start setting up the relationship. And I learned things about families that I, as the pastor, needed to know if I was going to serve them well. And you just talk, and you let them kind of take you where you need to go on the talk. And at the end, you hand out the paper that kind of explains the program, and you talk a little bit about it. But you talk mostly about them. How's life? And, you know, you hear about grandma's dying. And that's real important, because what you're doing is modeling that we're able to talk about important things, and you start making this safe place to grow. And I would every now and then just say, tell me, what's your favorite Bible story? And fathers, not to be sexist, but fathers don't like that question always. And, well, David and Goliath, I don't know why. you know, it's kind of fascinating. But do you hear what I'm pushing and I'm trying? Is that you begin by not, if Christianity, and tell me if you buy this, is Christianity a religion of rules or a relationship of response? Okay, yeah, you should say that. That's the right answer. But if you start confirmation class by setting up rules, what are you really teaching? How many of you were taught that Holy Communion is a gift of God's grace, and yet you could not receive communion until you'd been confirmed? That's me. I'm with you. Now, I'm not stupid in the sense that what I really learned is they said it's about grace, but I got to get confirmed and earn it. Do you hear? We've got to get congruent with what we're living and teaching with the folks so that it all comes together. And having a meeting with everybody that you hand out the rules is teaching them awful stuff about Christianity. And what a gift to be able to have 8 calls with 8 families in which you sit and you really hear a lot of life. Now, I would do that like for a week and a half. My last few years in Kearney, we had about 45 kids in confirmation, and I was exhausted at the end of that. But let me tell you also, I became a pastor to folks that I've never been a pastor to before. And pastor isn't just putting on a collar and having a title and all that. It's, do they know you? Do you know them? Do you care about them? Is it a real relationship? And that's made in heaven because they want the kid in confirmation, so they'll come for that half hour. Do you hear what I'm saying? Okay? Are you buying so far? Questions, concerns, pushback? Okay.
Where does the catechism fall into all this?
We're going to get there. Okay? And if we don't, I'll just excuse you and pray and then... No. Now, that was the beginning of the year. I set up, during that year, 2 other interview times with the kids. And it was not a half hour this time. It was 15 minutes with each kid, and it was usually Saturday morning. And you remember? The kids don't look forward to coming in by themselves to see the pastor. And I had the conversation was, how you doing? Oh, okay. What do you like? Oh, I don't know. It wasn't deep, wonderful conversation. I don't want to make you think this thing just took off, because it doesn't. But what you do is you keep trying. I love, there's a wonderful therapist in Omaha that I used with the church I served there, who once in front of the church family, he was giving a presentation, and I thought it'd be smart to say, you know, as he was talking about spending time with your kids, that I would just say, you know, some of us don't have a lot of time, so we really go after quality time. In front of a whole bunch of people, he said, you know, that's just malarkey. And why that is, did the kid decide it was quality time? You have to set yourself up to be with them and near them, and it becomes quality time. And so you got to put in the quantity. And to be honest, those 2 interviews, at least in the first year of confirmation, the kids didn't look forward to it, I didn't either, but we spent time together, okay? And you talk about faith, and that's when it becomes more personalized. You're not in class answering questions. I want to know, tell me about your prayer life. Is Jesus real, or is this like Santa Claus to you? How does it feel? What do you think God hopes for you? Do you like church? Or is it boring? Kind of scary questions, but you know, if the pastor's willing to ask that, that changes how the kid thinks they can talk. Again, we're after a safe place to grow. And if you're scared to ask that stuff, all you're doing is jumping through the hoops. Do you hear? This is the difference. Many years we used mentors, and you know, to be real honest, that's as good as the mentors are. If the mentors buy into it and really do it, it's super. If the mentors are just kind of going through the motions or whatever, it doesn't help you. And so what I would encourage, if you decide to go the mentor route, make sure you pick folks that are going to really try and do it. and not just fill it in. Okay, number 2 after relationships is how best to learn. I'm an old special education teacher. I taught in special ed before going to seminary. And it's wonderful training. It has really helped me to work with you. Do you know what special ed is? You tell them what you're going to teach them, you teach them, and you tell them what you just taught them. You work that, and that's a good route to go. But also, you're trained in you want to use as many senses as possible. Do you know, for most of the centuries that Christianity has been alive, it's been an entirely auditory experience. You go to church and you listen. Stained glass windows were a real battle against that in the Middle Ages because they wanted to tell the story of Jesus so people could see, because many of them couldn't read and stuff. People who get upset about the screens in church and so on need to look around and say, oh, we got stained glass windows that tell this story. Kind of like the screen is telling the story now. You try to stimulate more of the senses and help that to become. I believe in a theory that is simply called, and this is in the section, How Best to Learn, Divide and Conquer. As my dear wife has proved, when I served in Bellevue, our confirmation classes started getting bigger, and every Wednesday night I was coming home mad. And to be honest, she said one day, just stop it. You're always upset. And what it was because I had had probably 3 hours of wrestling matches with a 7th grade class and then an 8th grade class in which they were hard to discipline and kind of get control. And I was trying to do it all by myself and with 20 kids in the class that, you know, they came from different schools and all this kind of stuff. It was a mess. And so Anita just said, I don't like Wednesdays when you always come home upset and angry about being a pastor and about these stupid kids. And because part of it was she knew I loved the kids. I wanted so badly to help and do that my passion made it worse. And so they were out of control, and I was too. And so real simple theory. Tell me if this is rocket science. Let's invite 6 or 7 other adults, and let's divide and conquer. So what we did was if you got 30 kids in confirmation, you get 5, 6, 7, 8 teachers, however many you can, and all of a sudden you got small groups. And what we did was, at the beginning, I got to, as pastor, lay out what is the theme, what are we after, what do we want to learn tonight? And it was real good for me because I had to be real objective, and then we gave them stuff to do, the exercises. This is where the catechism comes in. We followed the catechism straightforward. We taught them the 10 Commandments. We taught them the Lord's Prayer. We taught them the Creed. We taught them about baptism and communion. But I got to have the first 10, 15 minutes with all of the kids like this, but the teachers are all sprinkled in, so we were in control. And after 10, 15 minutes, they had enough of that. I'd had enough of that. And then they went into their small groups. And then they talked about it, or had exercises to fill out, or did whatever, okay? But in small groups, number 1, discipline goes away. Number 2, the kid who wants to be the clown and entertain everybody else only has 3 other kids or 2 other kids. It ain't worth it. And so they're concentrating, but also the kid that never says anything, that just slumps in the corner and his kids, they're a part of it. And that makes a difference. So, simple. Divide and conquer, but it works.